Welcome everyone. You should see my screen right now, and you should also see my guest here today, Odhran McCloskey. I'd like to welcome everyone in the audience today for this talk, the Meet Business Talk together with Freshpork. Two things before we go to start. First of all, you might recognize that every one of you is on mute at the moment. And that will stay for the duration of the talk, just purely to keep the audio clear. Secondly, if you do have any questions, and we really anticipate questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. So wherever you're sitting at the moment, on your laptop or with your tablet or your phone, you should have a little chat icon on the side. So if there's any question coming up towards me or towards Odhran, you're more than welcome to please post that in the chat, and we will address it at the end of this presentation. Otherwise, I think we're going ahead with this webinar. The topic of this webinar today is, as you might obviously aware, that's why you clicked and joined today, is using the ERP as a growth driver in the meat processing industry. So using the digitization we're currently in as a driver in the meat industry. Before we go right ahead in the talk itself, I'd like to introduce ourselves very quickly, myself and Odhran, as well as the companies we're working for, so you get a bit of a picture of where we're coming from and what are we doing and why we even talk about this topic today. So I think I'll just quickly go ahead. Marcus Vitor, as you see here, I'm working with CSB since 2013, so that's a bit over 7 years now. Started in Germany for the implementation and rollout of IT solutions in the food industry and in the meat industry. And since 2016, working in Australia and New Zealand for those two markets in the food and beverage industry. So that's very quickly about me. I am very much happy here and very grateful that Odhran McCloskey is joining me here today from Freshpork. Odhran, thank you very much for joining us here. If you would like to quickly introduce yourself towards the audience so they know what's the pleasure to have you in the call.
Thanks for that, Marcus, and thanks for inviting me to participate. As you mentioned, I'm the IT manager for Freshpork New Zealand. I've about 35 years experience in the information technology business across a range of large corporate and government type environments for the most part. And most of that experience is on the technical side of things, from systems programming on MBS mainframes and database administration, and mostly on Oracle, I have to say, and a variety of infrastructure management roles. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Odhran. Just very quickly to our company. So that's really just two slides before we go into the actual talk. Why we think we talk about the digitization today. CSB itself is a software provider, as you can imagine right now. We provide software or industry-specific software solutions for the food industry, and with that for the meat industry. So, and I think, Odhran, you can elaborate on that later on a little bit as well. We have industry solutions for the pork industry. We have industry solutions for the beef industry. And that is basically what we had. Markets in 1977, so over 40 years. The other two key facts to take away from the slide here is that we have over 1,200 installations in over 50 countries and provide the solution in over 30 languages. The solution itself could be anything from a classic, in that terms, classic ERP solution, from procurement, production, forecasting, sales, and dispatch. It can be any deeper, going down to the machinery level. If we talk about MES, if we talk about OEE, line control, SIM applications, those kind of installations, and all the way on top, also things like financial accounting, BI integration, and human resources. So it is a very sophisticated end-to-end and tailored solution towards the industry. Going back 4 years, CSB and Freshpork went into partnership. So this is what I'm handing over to you, Odhran.
Okay, Freshpork is also a family-owned business. We're a pork processor and wholesaler based in New Zealand. We process probably about a third of New Zealand's domestic pork supply and employ, I think it's about 180 people now. And we focus pretty much exclusively on the domestic market. And this year, we've been in business for 35 years, although this year being a rather unusual year for many reasons. We're particularly proud of the way we responded to the various challenges that the year has thrown up.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think you just had to hit the right point here, or the right keyword, challenges. So going right into the discussion now, using the digitization as a growth, why to use digitization. Clearly it is the way to go these years, or this time. However, there should be a driver to bring you to this position to save our business. Here on the screen, the audience, you should see a couple of those challenges which we summarized for you. That is clearly something for the meat industry within Australia and New Zealand. And whilst the meat industry is a very important industry for Australia, for New Zealand, in the domestic market, in the export market, it has to deal, or it does deal with a lot of challenges. So said, a couple of them are here on the screen. The supply chain obviously becomes increasingly complex. The retailer are pressuring, on you to keep the prices low, costly raw materials, the challenges are immense. And then obviously things like unprecedented global challenges like COVID-19. I don't think there's any webinar or Zoom meeting at the moment that doesn't at least touch that point. But the meat industry has a lot of challenges itself. Odhran, how do you see those challenges or any other challenges, particularly for your business and for your company in New Zealand?
I think we can certainly identify with a number of those challenges that you've presented there, Marcus. But I guess like most other businesses, particularly food business, we'll have challenges on multiple levels. And for us, probably the ever-changing nature of consumer trends is particularly important. For example, consumers wanting to know more about where their food comes from and that it's produced in a sustainable way. Those sort of things are clearly important trends for us that we have to respond to. And I guess just in relation to ourselves here in New Zealand, the pork industry is particularly small compared to other meat proteins and a relatively small number of competitors. I mentioned before that we're primarily domestically focused. So we're competing against other meat proteins, your beef, lamb, chicken, fish, and cheaper pork imports where typically fewer animal welfare standards. And I guess to focus or to overcome some of these challenges, we probably focus very much on the supply chain side of things, specifically the alignment of supply and demand. In other words, trying to match size and spec and quantity of pigs to meet those customer demands. And in some regards, CSB has been a key enabler in providing our business with key data in a timely manner. Yeah,
that's absolutely right. I think another point to put here as well, and that will be the last slide before we put this away. Those are obviously all challenges you and potentially other market competitors have to face. In your example as well, you have a very vast supply chain itself. So you deliver from the feed mill to the livestock over to the processing, the whole process is integrated into your business, stretched over those two islands. So that itself is a challenge as well, which I guess you try to challenge with the digitization within your business.
Yeah, it's always going to be a complicating factor having a geographically spread organization, and logistics is a huge part of our business, and also a fairly large cost in our business as well.
I'm just closing the screen, so you should just see Odhran and myself, because I think we're going a bit deeper into the conversation. We don't need the screens right now. As you just said yourself, at least one of those countermeasurements to respond to some of those challenges is the digitization itself. So going a bit deeper, what role does digitization as general, but also the ERP system, the integrated ERP system, and for that matter, any other technology, what role does that play for your daily business and for your competitiveness?
I suppose, like businesses of any reasonable size, and certainly for manufacturers, we'd have a number of discrete functional areas. And in the past, those functional areas would have made use of point technologies to help with data capture, or maybe early forays into automation. But the key there is that there were point solutions that were implemented in specific areas. However, today, when we talk about digitization, it's not just an enabler within those functional areas, but it's across functional areas, and that's for us is the key, that it's looking across our whole business, and being able to visualize and analyze our workflows and our data in real time across those functional areas is a fundamental asset for us, and it probably underpins not just operational but also strategic decision making. It's probably pretty much a cornerstone of our competitiveness, just being able to get that whole of business picture in real time.
That's really good. That's a really great statement here. Maybe to give a bit of a better picture for the audience here. So understanding where you are currently with the digitization, what's the driver for you and the outcome. Maybe, as I said, to paint a bit of a bigger picture, what did the company or your business look like 9-10 years ago to today, right? What are the changes? Well, what has changed in this time?
10 years is a long time, Marcus. So, I guess 10 years ago, Freshpork was really only dipping its toe in the technology pond. As I mentioned before, we had a mixture of point solutions, probably both package and homegrown solutions, with little integration, has to be said, and a lot of fairly inefficient data reconciliation type jobs, which to be honest never really reconciles as such. There was a fair bit of writing off that was done, and I suppose from a technology infrastructure point of view, these were housed in our various sites and needed quite a bit of feeding and watering. So we evolved through these systems and various iterations of those systems to the realization and then adoption of a central ERP, CSB, which for us, we run on externally hosted virtual machines. And again, for Freshpork, the idea of externally hosting is pretty important, because we're not a technology company, and we like the commodity nature of the model, that resources can be scaled up and indeed down. All that doesn't tend to happen as the requirements change. So instead of having to go out and refresh hardware, we make a phone call to our data center provider and dial up the resources we need. And I guess on the business side of things, our data transformation process over the last 4 years with CSB has transitioned our core data sets to an integrated and, as mentioned before, real-time model, which has significantly enhanced both the quality and the reliability of our data. And you know, we absolutely run our business both operationally and strategically on that data. And obviously the CSB platform has been a pretty key enabler to this step change into a centralized data model.
I think that's a really good picture. Thank you for that, Odhran. Going from 10 years ago, as you just described, to where you are today, an implementation like CSB, or at least an ERP system like that magnitude, going through all your departments and all your businesses, that doesn't happen overnight. Clearly, it doesn't happen overnight. So we started, or we came to the table 4 years ago. You've been using CSB since 4 years ago, but it has been a journey to bring this project live. And despite the fact what marketing will tell us, ERP implementation of that magnitude never runs without problems. So maybe a bit of a takeaway for the audience here. What are the differences you would see, or which did you find between the theory of an implementation and the actual practice later on? So the journey along that. What are these little of takeaways for the audience here if they look for a process like that?
Yeah, I guess you're quite right, Marcus, in that it's not a trivial undertaking. ERP implementations are probably notorious for their failure rate, really. So the fact that we're sitting here talking 4 years later is probably a good sign for us. In terms of the things that are important to be aware of and to think of when you're looking at an ERP, probably the first thing I think of is having buy-in at all levels of the organization and being very clear about expectations. You need to be clear about why you're doing the project and what you want the outcome to be, or what you think you want the outcome to be. That's probably top of my list, really. But even with good communications and being clear about expectations, different people will have varying levels of comprehension about what an ERP is and what it can do. Even people who are familiar with the concept will have various ideas about what it is. I guess another thing I think of is training. Training is a huge part of any ERP implementation, but not just training, but the timing of the training and the level of engagement in training needs to be considered. We probably didn't put enough effort into training people, and again, in hindsight, it's probably best to take people out of their work environment and deliver training, and also probably repeat that training close to go live so that people have it in their minds rather than having gone on training 3 months before and forgotten half of it again. Other things that are important, certainly during go live and for a period afterwards, weeks or months, it's particularly important to maintain those high levels of support. Yeah. Again, hindsight is wonderful, but we probably didn't put enough focus in that post go live phase. We probably paid too much attention to just getting the system in, and it consequently had some post go live issues because those workflows and workloads on an unfamiliar platform weren't fully thought through, or weren't thought through enough. In terms of testing as well, you need to test as many scenarios as you can. And part of the problem there is that oftentimes you don't even know all those scenarios on your legacy platform or within your business.
Yeah.
You know, so it's quite important to sit down with your stakeholders and go through those scenarios. And as mentioned before, it's always a bit more difficult when you're in a multi-site environment, which a lot of businesses like ours are. But as I said, we're sitting down here 4 years later. We're on the platform. We've learned a great deal about the platform. We've expanded our initial use of that product, CSB, into several new areas over that time. And the platform has been pretty instrumental in our ability to respond to those customer requirements that I mentioned up front. And again, touching on this year, when we needed a lot of our people to work remotely during various lockdowns, the centralized nature of the CSB implementation meant essentially one less headache to worry about.
Yeah, that's really good. I think to summarize that, an ERP implementation of that magnitude is definitely challenging, but it has its payoffs, as you just said. It definitely has its payoffs. Going forward, so we had a bit where you are today, the journey you've been through to get to this point of today. Where do you see yourself in the future? Potentially with CSB, you'd like to increase your digitization. Is there anything more in plan, or is that where you say we feel very comfortable we are at the moment?
Yeah, again, to a reasonable extent, what we did with CSB was replacing functionality that we had already in various different solutions, point solutions or manual workflows. So a lot of the capability that we had from if you like, from a computer system is the same, but just on a different platform. Now, I'm not discounting all the benefits I mentioned before, but essentially what we've got now is a solid base, a solid foundation upon which we can build and deliver other things. So absolutely, we plan to do more, and CSB will be the platform of choice. In fact, we're doing things and it's not on CSB. I'll be asking why not.
Yeah, that's really great feedback. I think we need to start wrapping things up. Before we go to the Q&A, I see a couple of questions came in. Odhran, can you share your 3 lessons you'd like to share with the audience here today about this whole process you encountered, and something you want to give them away before we go to the Q&A? And for that, let me just quickly bring the screen up again. So these 3 lessons you'd like to share with the audience.
Yeah, again, some of these I've mentioned already, but I guess the immediate benefit was the integration and end-to-end visibility of data flows within the organization, and having that solid foundation upon which we can envisage a pipeline of future projects. So that's definitely probably the main benefit and the main thing we've got out of moving to an ERP. The point about the core data there is basically just to emphasize that you need to put the effort in before you move to your ERP and get your core data in as good a shape as possible. And I'm talking about things like item codes, getting rid of any old items that are no longer relevant, looking at your address data, your customers, suppliers, partner address details. Get all that in good shape before you look to move it in. And that last one probably shouldn't be number 3 on that slide. It's absolutely key that you have the right people with the right skills on board. We were particularly fortunate to have people who not only had gone through other ERP implementations in the past, but also had a good cross mix of skills in both technology and business areas. And I can't overemphasize that enough. It was absolutely fundamental. Just another couple to throw in there as well, Marcus. Change management is obviously key and critical. Manage the people, talk to the people, keep the communications going, because it can always be a challenge to I guess identify and understand complexities that operate in a business. People who are doing it day to day on the shop floor know what they're doing, but don't always describe it properly, and the people on the other side trying to understand what they're doing don't always ask the right questions. So you really need to dig into your individual workflows and get a good handle on what actually is being done, so that when you come to implement that in an ERP, you are actually implementing the correct thing. And the other thing is I guess a big bang type approach as opposed to a stepped approach. Again, with hindsight, we might have bitten off more than we could chew initially. You obviously have to, there's a sweet spot where you have to say, okay, we need to get a basic level of functionality in, but you should probably think about what that basic level is for your business and do as little as you need to do to get on board before looking to expand your use of the product. But having said that, we see technology, I guess, as an ever-evolving cycle, and having that base, I think, will serve us well as we look to do other projects within the business.
Thank you very much for sharing with that, Odhran. That was very in depth. I think the next question we basically can skip. Just like a three major payoffs. You've been repeating that over and over in your feedback at the moment. So really just trying to tie back to the beginning of this conversation, the challenges in the industry, the challenges towards your to your business as you are at the moment, and potentially with the lookout, with further projects with CSB or the other digitization projects. Do you feel confident enough in the position where you are at the moment? Do you feel like that you are competitive and that you can head those challenges confident enough?
I suppose the short answer is yes, Marcus. Again, I'd emphasize that we are in a hell of a lot of a better place than we were going back before 4 years ago when we got onto the platform. If you'd asked me some of these questions 3 years ago, I might have given very different answers, but our knowledge and experience with the product set has evolved and matured over the 4 years that we've been using it, and we feel very confident that not only is it capable of supporting any business endeavors that we want to embark on, but that we'll be able to probably do it with in-house skill sets, supported by CSB, of course, but largely we know what's possible, and we know what's not possible, and we're pretty confident that CSB will be the platform of choice for us.
That's really good to hear. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Odhran, and your especially experience. Before we close this off, I can see we have a couple of questions here. So if you'd like, I'll just go from them top to bottom through. First one is, morning. Is Freshpork using CSB in all areas of the business? So I think that does answer a little bit the screen we have here at the moment, but maybe you want to give a feedback of that as well, Odhran, because all areas, that really depends a bit on how you define it.
That's quite true, Marcus. It depends how you define it. There's probably a couple of areas that I would consider fundamental base areas where we still aren't fully on board with CSB, and that's not because CSB isn't capable of doing it. It's mostly because our own business project pipeline hasn't got to them yet. So we're only using CSB in a limited way for procurement, and that's, as I say, simply because our procurement workflows and processes are still fairly manual, and that's one area where we definitely want to look at. There are a few other areas that are on the sort of short to medium term workflow pipeline, and again, no reason that they won't be done on CSB. There are a couple of areas, and the one that springs to mind is some of the things on the HR side of things, where it's likely that we'll stick with existing packages for that side of things. So payroll and HR probably won't be done in CSB, and there's probably good reasons for doing that. But certainly in terms of our operations and our core business, if it's not on CSB at the moment, it will be in the relatively near future.
Thank you, Odhran. The next question: what areas is Freshpork looking to improve now that have been using CSB for 4 years? Are there specific areas that can be improved?
Well, there's always room for improvement in all areas, Marcus. I think if you look at the fact that we've a pretty rich collection of data going back over 4 years on CSB, I think we'd probably like to do a bit more in the business intelligence side of things with that data, using that data to get a bit more of a handle on trend analysis and the factors that may influence the ups and downs of the sales cycle.
Thank you, Odhran. The next question: did you start small with ERP and build up, or was it a full implementation?
I touched on this one briefly earlier, but we turned on CSB pretty much overnight with a number of key areas of our business. So I'm thinking about sales, inventory, finance, and some of our production areas, logistics, supported by some of the master data like the item master and the address master. So we actually bit off quite a bit of functionality at cutover. And again, in hindsight, would we have done it the same way? Probably not. In the 4 years that we've been using it, relatively early after go live, we rolled it out to all our production floors, and about 2 years ago the last legacy system, which was our grading system for carcasses, was turned off in favor of CSB. So, you know, it's a journey, and it always will be a journey, and it'll be an ongoing journey. And you know, there will be other things we will look to use to support our project pipeline over the coming years.
Thank you, Odhran. Another question, I guess, for you is, did you visit or collaborate with other users prior?
Sorry, Marcus, when you say, did we collaborate with other users, what are you referring to there? What do you think the question refers to?
To be honest, I'm not quite sure. And unfortunately, the attendee has left, so I can't ask him the question again. I would assume if you got any feedback from your key users before the implementation. That's just what I'm reading here at the moment. So is that a process you had before going ahead with CSB to collaborate or get the feedback input from your key users? That's how I read the question.
Yeah. Yeah, and if that's the way I understand it as well, it's a pretty important part of the implementation. We probably had close to a year of time between making a decision to go with CSB and implementing. And in that time, we had quite a lot of engagement with business stakeholders, a lot of focus sessions where we got the key business users around the table with internal and CSB people to tease out the requirements and to make sure that what we implemented in CSB reflected what we actually wanted to do in the real world. And again, I kind of alluded to this earlier on, that particular exercise is quite a challenge to do. We didn't always do it right, partly because, as I mentioned, we're not a technology company, and when you try to tease out what people do on a day-to-day basis, even those people, when they're describing it, don't always think of everything that the person asking the question needs to know. And the person asking the question may or may not have the expertise to tease it out. So we did it for some areas fairly well, for other areas not so well, and that's kind of why we change things and refine things over the weeks and months post go live.
Yeah. Thank you, Odhran. Another question, does your system integrate with supplier and customer systems? Was this a significant challenge?
That's a really good question. We've done a limited amount of third-party integration. CSB is actually really good in terms of its APIs. So there's a very well structured set of APIs for getting data in and getting data out of CSB. You know, so you obviously have the application itself, which most people sit in front of, and then you have a set of tools and interfaces that you can use to interact with the system in other ways. And we've made a reasonable amount of use of that API side of things to, for example, integrate our third-party warehouses, where we send data to them and receive data back from them in an automated fashion. We've done it to a lesser extent with some of our key customers. You know, so if we think of our larger customers, they would also have systems that are capable of automated interactions with external systems, and we have worked with a number of those to put data streams in place. Again, I see that as a real efficiency gain for our business. You know, if we can automate things that previously would have meant either rekeying data or you know, taking things over the phone and keying them in manually, there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained. So as I say, we've worked with a number of our bigger customers and suppliers and have put systems in place. And there's some of our smaller, more progressive customers who are now asking for the same facility. And you know, it's generally pretty straightforward to put in once you've done it a couple of times.
Thank you, Odhran. Indeed, a couple of good questions here. Unfortunately, that participant has left as well. I guess we are a bit over the time at the moment. So I'll say we take 3 more questions, and then we need to start wrapping this up. The next one, Odhran, continual improvement is critical to ERP systems. How do you manage this across your business and bring them over departments to the journey, sorry?
Yeah, that is a good question. I guess Freshpork has a pretty stable workforce, and that's a real benefit for us and in our industry. And the advantage in relation to the question that was asked is that most of our people can remember what it was like before we had CSB. And can remember the problems and can remember the amount of effort it took just to keep the place running. So when we want to do something new and we sit down with them, or they come to us and say, can we do X, Y, Z? Usually there's pretty good acceptance that, hey, we're doing this on CSB. It's better than what we had before by a long way, and we've got people who know the product set pretty well and will deliver a good solution on that platform. Having said that, there's always people who will be reluctant to change. They might have been reluctant to let go of the old systems, or they might be reluctant to do new things with the current platform. And you just have to sit down with them, talk them through it, show them what's changing, show them what's new, show them what the benefit is, show them how it'll make their job easier, and then just keep supporting them as they start to use the new piece of functionality. So a lot of it is about communications.
Thank you, Odhran. I think that's great advice. I hope that's something to take away here. Second last question, how many, I think that's a bit in relation to that, how many people have you got working on CSB full-time, implementing new processes and maintaining processes?
Yeah, again, a good question. We're a pretty small organization, 180 people across the whole business. Within the, if you like, the back end team, we have essentially 3 people. Now, the 3 people wouldn't be categorized, and certainly wouldn't categorize themselves as the CSB team as such, but there's 3 of us who have a good in-depth understanding of the product and what it can do and how to do it. You know, it's the support of CSB by those internal people wouldn't be their full-time job. You know, there's probably a mixture of accountancy and business analysis and technology skills that those 3 people have that allow us to support the product to a large extent in a self-sufficient way. It's probably worth saying at this point that within New Zealand, we're currently the only users of the CSB product, and to some extent that that has driven the need for us to be maybe a bit more self-sufficient than we would otherwise need to be. We obviously have a support team within CSB that we can pick up the phone and call and get help for things, but certainly our first port of call for anything that we want to do would be to say, can we do this ourselves? Do we have the skills to do it ourselves? And if the answer is yes, we go and do it. If the answer is no, then we pick up the phone, we talk to CSB, and between us determine what needs to be done.
Thank you, Odhran. And the last question I'd like to pick here is, did you engage with other customers to get help or just discuss CSB in their business?
In terms of the implementation, I assume the question refers to, the implementation was largely done by CSB working with Freshpork. So CSB brought various subject matter experts on premise in Freshpork to run the implementation. So we didn't talk to other people in terms of the implementation. Obviously, in terms of the selection of CSB, we talked to both other businesses and other software providers to evaluate solutions, which led to the selection of CSB. So I hope I'm hitting what the questioner was asking there.
I hope so too. There was no more context to that. I think we wrap things up. I want to thank everyone participating in this Meet Business talk here today, and especially want to thank you, Odhran. Thank you very much for your time, for sharing your thoughts, and especially your experience in this quite some exciting journey implementing such a system in your company. I really much appreciate your time here.
No worries, all good.
Thank you very much. For everyone who would like to follow up on this, we have recorded this, so we will potentially post it somewhere. But otherwise, yeah, much appreciate everyone's attendance here. Thank you very much, Odhran. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcus. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.